Hello and welcome back to the Nasty Metal Productions channel here at YouTube, and welcome to another album of the week. This is episode number 185. Today I will be looking at Syndecade, which was Pretty Maids' fourth album, originally released through Columbia Records sometime in 1992, maybe early 1992. Maybe January, February, March, somewhere within there, I believe. Could be April. Either way, since we are at the last month of the year 2022, boy, this year really flew by fast. This album has reached its 30th anniversary. Obviously, since we're pretty much past probably the month that this would have been released on and whatever. So, before I get into Syndecade, we need to go backwards to the band's third album, Jump the Gun, or sometimes known as Lethal Heroes, maybe in the US market, I believe, from 1990, which was the only album to be produced by Deep Purple's Roger Glover. I had spotlighted Jump the Gun about 2 years ago. Thought it was an alright album, but definitely it was a further push into the commercial AOR/melodic hard rock direction that Columbia kinda was pushing Pretty Maids into, in a way starting with their second and most popular album, Future World, which had the hooks, but also the edge, which I felt Jump the Gun/Lethal Heroes lacked. So it was no surprise to learn that the band themselves knew that it was a lackluster album, though I don't know if I could blame the direction onto Roger Glover. But because of the fact that Jump the Gun/Lethal Heroes was a commercial failure, guitar player Ricky Marks, bass guitarist Alan DeLong, keyboard player Alan Owen, though credited on the album here for Syndecade, and drummer Phil Moore all left the group by late 1990, leaving only Ronnie Atkins and Ken Hammer. So the two remaining original members began writing songs for a new album, this time with full creative control, according to Atkins, due to the tumultuous, I obviously, it's a word that I'm not quite familiar with, but I wrote it down. I've got it in my fucking notes here. The tumultuous situation around the band, Atkins and Hammer wrote aggressive and heavy songs. According to Atkins, the band decided to work with the Danish producer Lemming Rasmussen, who actually had mixing credits on the Future World album. So the reason they chose him, of course, was to avoid the overproduced sound of Jump the Gun/Lethal Heroes. So, to complete the band's lineup, Atkins and Hammer recruited bass guitarist Ken Jackson and drummer Michael Fast. Some fucking cute bastard's gonna probably add Bender to the end of his name. Shit. He would probably do all the fingering. God damn it. Some people will actually get that joke. Maybe my brother will. It's an inside joke, to be honest. It's an inside joke. Alright, digressing here. I'm just digressing. So, the album was recorded at Sweet Silence Studios in Copenhagen and Studio One in Horsens from July to September of 1991, thus being released sometime in early of 1992. So, for Syndecade here, it consists of 11 tracks and clocks in at the length of 44 minutes and 53 seconds. So these 11 tracks are, again, beginning with Running Out, Who Said Money, Nightmare in the Neighborhood, the title track, Come On Tough, Come On Nasty, Raise Your Flag, Credit Card Lover, No It Ain't Easy, Healing Touch, In the Flesh, and the cover of John Sykes' Please Don't Leave Me. So there you go. There's your 11 tracks, or 11 songs, or whatever. So, let's let's definitely get into the album itself and my thoughts. So compared to the previous works, meaning like Jump the Gun / Lethal Heroes, or like Future World, or even their very first album, Red Hot and Heavy, or the EP, this does come off more heavier, but there is also a clear American MTV influence being present here. While it's definitely not the slick AOR / melodic hard rock of the previous album, again, Jump the Gun / Lethal Heroes, this is still far removed from the traditional metal of the earlier stuff, as in the 1983 EP and 1984's debut album, Red Hot and Heavy. But it's not quite the more refined, hooky, melodic metal of Future World. It's indeed greatly influenced by stuff like Slaughter, the MTV era band, again, not referring to the Canadian almost proto-death metal, thrash metal band. Also Skid Row, Warrant, and MTV era Whitesnake. It's indeed rooted in the heavier direction that some of those bands took during this period, like in Skid Row's Slave to the Grind, or even Warrant's Dog Eat Dog. But again, during this period, most of those bands took, but it's just far removed from the classic traditional metal that Pretty Maids used to have in their earlier period. It's not to say that this album is bad, it's just different. I'll actually take this over Jump the Gun and fucking Slaughter or anything Poison and all of that ilk had released during this period, or anything beforehand, to be honest. But I won't take this over the first two albums or even the EP, I just wouldn't. Now, there are some songs here that recall their metal period. For example, songs like the album opener, Running Out, the title track, Raise Your Flag, and In the Flesh. These are the songs that really pop out at me, that really kind of recall the sort of classic, sort of definitely metal period that Pretty Maids definitely had, or were in, the sort of classic metal sound. These are the ones that really got that. Another track here, Nightmare in the Neighborhood, is not a bad song either. It has the more melodic nature of what you kind of got off of Future World, but then you get songs like fucking Who Said Money, Come On Tough, Come On Nasty, Credit Card Lover, and these are just pure products of their time. Nothing else to write home about. I mean, they're okay. I can listen to them just fine. But man, they just do not represent the best period of Pretty Maids, and it really just sounds like a band that's having an identity crisis. And again, I get it. They're trying to stay current with the period in 1992, but compared to some of those other songs that I kind of mentioned, like Running Out, the title track, Raise Your Flag, and In the Flesh, these just come across as very plastic, almost, you can say. And I just don't want to hear the kind of stuff from Pretty Maids. I don't mind it coming from a band by Skid Row, but be honest, at least on Slave to the Grind, Sebastian Bach and co. were coming up with much more better lyrics and were much more thoughtful. This just sounds like a band that is trying to copy that, but yet isn't yet reaching that sort of level. It's just way too behind, and it just makes them sound like a band that's trying at their best to kind of stay current, and that's what I get from some of the other songs like Who Said Money and so on. It just says it just screams identity crisis. That's all I'm gonna go on there about. So I don't want to keep going and continue further and get too repetitive. However, there is one cover on here, and that's the final track, Please Don't Leave Me, which is a cover of the 1982 solo song from John Sykes, which had featured the late Thin Lizzy frontman, Phil Lynott. Actually, this was just a year before John Sykes would eventually join Thin Lizzy for what would become the final Thin Lizzy album, Thunder and Lightning, which is one of my absolute favorite albums from Thin Lizzy. God damn, that's a goddamn good record, and I think sooner or later I'm going to cover that record on this channel, and I can't wait. That is one of my personal favorites, and some of the best work from John Sykes. But they chose to cover that song here, and it's no secret that Pretty Maids were heavily influenced by Thin Lizzy, especially during the earlier period. You really got that Thin Lizzy influence, and to kind of further go into that, they so much were such a fan of Thin Lizzy that they covered Little Darling on 1984's Red Hot and Heavy, which was their debut full-length album. Please Don't Leave Me, it's a fine cover and one of the other good songs off of this album, and it's just one of those that kind of fits at home with Pretty Maids, because again, given that they had already covered Little Darling, it fits so greatly with them, and I wish they stuck more to something like this instead of trying to shoehorn shit like Who Said Money and Come On Tough, Come On Nasty, stuff like that. That just sounds so uncharacteristic and just sounds like a band that's just having, like I stated, an identity crisis and just really trying to stay current. So all in all, it's not a complete train wreck because it has some solid moments, but it's indeed a product of its time. It's far from my favorite from the band, though you can't go wrong with the early stuff. Obviously, you really can't. But again, this is not a bad record. I can listen to it, and I don't feel like skipping any of these songs, even the ones that I stated are kind of so far removed of some of the really good songs off of this one. But still, it's not my go-to Pretty Maids album. When I first got this, I was listening to it quite a bit. I was listening to it more than Jump the Gun, but it still wasn't giving me the same feeling and the same inspiration that the earlier stuff was giving me. Again, like the EP, Red Hot and Heavy, and even Future World. It just wasn't. But again, I do think that this is a bit more of a better record than Jump the Gun. I know some is going to chastise me for that. Will be like, oh, blasphemy. But honestly, there's just something about Jump the Gun that just felt very uninspired, and I mean, some of the stuff off of here isn't all that inspiring to begin with, but there's at least a little bit of something here that I can get behind more so than what I was getting off of Jump the Gun. Maybe it's just because of some of the production issues. Again, I'm not going to blame Roger Glover. I think Roger was just being told what to do, but still, it's just completely, I mean, I'll take Jump the Gun over anything Deep Purple was actually releasing during that period. Slaves, I can't remember the fucking album that one, but the one with Joe Lynn Turner on it, which I think just sounded more like a Rainbow record than really a Deep Purple record. And again, I could take Jump the Gun over that, but I'm not going to take Jump the Gun over any of the stuff before, and I'll definitely take this album, Sin Decade, over Jump the Gun, but I'm not going to take any of these two over what they did before, which was just fucking great, is all I can say there. So with that said, this album has reached, again, its 30th anniversary, so for anyone who has spent years listening to this, whether they be positive or negative, you can leave your comments in the comments section below. So with that, I hope all of you enjoyed. This is Heavy Thrash saying I am out, and I'll see you all later. Take care, everyone.